Hi. Yeah, my blood's boiling. My blood's boiling. So I'm gonna talk about this for a bit. I don't know how long, but I'm gonna talk until my other eye claps, and this video is just gonna go on forever, or until like my anger is finally subsided. But that's probably not gonna be true because I fucking hate EA. Holy shit, man. So, what's making me hate EA? Let's take a little fucking gander. Like much of the industry, EA executives were growing increasingly enamored with so-called live service games, such as Destiny and Overwatch, in which players continue to engage with and spend money on a title for months, or even years after its initial release. When EA aiming to make a splash with its fast-growing category, BioWare poured resources into Anthem, a live service shooter game that checked all the right boxes. On one day in October 2017, Laidlaw summoned all his colleagues into a conference room and pulled out a few pricey bottles of whiskey. Nice. The next Dragon Age sequel, he told them, would be pivoting to an online service game. A decision from above that he disagreed with. He was resigning from the studio. The assembled staff stayed late until the night, drinking and reminiscing about the franchise they loved. Fantastic. For everyone who's been like saying, yeah man, it's always BioWare's fault, BioWare's always at the fault, EA is like a little innocent baby birthday boy, fuck you, okay? Like, holy shit, man. I don't know what it's with BioWare games and the fact that they somehow dull people's creative thinking skills, okay? The fact that they can't really fucking understand that, oh no, it's not BioWare's fault, it's actually EA. Especially with the information we had before this article. Jason Schreier isn't saying anything new. He literally isn't saying anything new. We already got confirmation from this. But people needed, like their fucking children, to be guided for some reason. Don't know why. They could have done it themselves. They could have used their fucking heads and just said like, yes, since they said they pivoted from, a single player version, right, it must have been like, what was caused this? Well, EA's known to, have live service games. No, they're hemming and hawing on EA. For some reason, they're hemming and on like, oh, it can't be EA's fault, it must be BioWare's fault because they want to chase that bag, they want to chase that money. No, you fucking moron. Holy shit. Anyways, let me continue getting angry about this, okay? Former ARC director Matt Goldman replaced Laidlaw as creative director with a tiny team began pushing ahead on the new multiplayer version of Dragon Age, codenamed Morrison, while everyone else helped to finish Anthem, which was struggling to coalesce. Goldman pushed a pulpy, more light-hearted tone than the previous entries, which suited an online game, but was a drastic departure from the dark, dynamic stories that fans loved in the fantasy series. So again, the reason why Veilguard has the tone it does, EA. No, it's apparently somehow BioWare's fault. Fuck off. No, dude, it's not BioWare's fault, you moron. Oh. So then it says here, we were thinking, does this make sense? Does this play into our strengths? Or is this going to be another challenge we have to face? McKay later told Bloomberg News, no, we need to get back to what we really get, a single-player game. In theory, the reversion back to Dragon Age's third, tried and true single-player format should have been more welcome news inside BioWare, but there was a catch. Typically, this kind of pivot would be coupled with a rest and a period of pre-production, allowing the designers to formulate a new vision for the game. Instead, the team asked to change the game's fundamental structure and recast the entire story on the fly, according to people familiar with new marching orders. They were given a year and a half to finish, and told to aim for as wide a market as possible. Damn! EA at it again, being the worst studio in existence, okay? Man, dude, oh boy, dude, it's just so weird of me to see how fucked BioWare was. Not just in just what we could glance at and what we could theorize, but in just like how truly fucked it was. Oh yeah, you should go back to doing a single player game, EA says to BioWare, but you're gonna have to do it on the fly. We're not gonna give you any time or money for it, so have at it. Go ahead, have fun. Oh. This strict deadline became a recurrent problem. The development team would make decisions believing that they had less than a year to release the game, which severely limited the stories they could tell and the world they could build. Then the title would inevitably be delayed a few months, at which point they'd stuck with those old decisions with no chance to stop and reevaluate what was working. So, yeah. The reason why Veilguard turned out the way it wasn't because BioWare was just like, yeah, let's just not do good things and let's only do bad things. No, they wanted to do good things, but EA fucked them over. Wow, fantastic. Something we already knew, but somehow people needed Jason Schreier to say that, and even then, they're still taking the wrong position on it. They could not do the things they wanted to do with the game because they were limited because of the constant deadlines. At the end of 2022, amidst a continual dizzying leadership changes, the studio started distributing an alpha build of Dragon Age to get feedback internally and from outside playtesters. According to people familiar with the process, the reactions were concerning. The game's biggest problem, early players agreed, was the lack of satisfying choices and consequences. Previous BioWare titles had presented players with gut-wrenching choices, which allies to save, which faction to spare, which enemies to slay. Such dilemmas made fans feel like they were shaping the narrative, historically a big draw for many BioWare games. Yet again, the reason it did not exist was because EA kept having those deadlines and giving them no time to develop those things or money. Fantastic. In 2023, to help finish Dragon Age, BioWare brought in a second internal team, which was working on the next Mass Effect game. For decades, there's been a serious tension of the two well-established camps, known for their starkly divergent ways of doing things. BioWare developers like to joke that Dragon Age crew. Okay, first off, Jason Schreier, you fucking moron. It's not BioWare developers, it's the Mass Effect developers. Don't be coy about it. Like to joke that the Dragon Age crew was like a pirate ship, meandering and sometimes traveling off of course, eventually reaching the port, which is not true. The pirate ship model is meant to be a decentralized thing where when a developer does something, they do it because they want to do it and not because they're given marching orders. The reason why the Giants in Dragon Age Inquisition exist is one of those things where they're like, hey guys, just make whatever you want, okay, and do that. And they allowed it for it. And you know the consequences of Mass Effect's group was called the USS Enterprise because it was commands was issued straight from the top and executed zealotly. This is what happens. Casey Hudson made the ending himself. You know how I know this? Well, because Trick Weeks at the time was talking about this, and this makes a lot of sense with how the sort of USS Enterprise model works. If you're issuing orders from the top down, it means that you can't argue against it. You can't argue against the captain. You just can't do that. You just have to execute their orders as they want, and that's it. It can be great for games that, need auteur kind of things, but for games that can sort of collapse under themselves when bad decisions lead to it, like the Mass Effect endings. I have nothing to do with the ending beyond A, having argued successfully with a long time, needed a chance to say goodbye to Squad, B, having argued successfully that Cortez shouldn't automatically die in the shuttle crash, and C, having written Tali's goodbye, as well as a couple of other hollow goodbyes for people I wrote, more than Kasumi, Jack, etc. No other writer did that either, except for our lead. This was entirely work of our lead and Casey Hudson himself, Mac Walters being the lead, sitting in a room and going through draft after draft. And it kind of shows. And then over here it says, understand, the staff with the Catalyst you have to understand Casey is a really smart and really analytical guy. And the problem is that when he's not checked, he will assume that other people are like him, and he will really appreciate an almost a completely unemotionally intelligent ending. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Like, in part, what I'm going to talk about isn't just that, EA is bad and I hate them, It's also because it seems like this is bias against the Dragon Age team. The way that it is being described here without really any, nuance or but then here, it's like, the Dragon Age crew was like a pirate ship meandering and sometimes traveling off of course, but eventually reaching port. In contrast, the Mass Effect group was called the USS Enterprise after the Star Trek ship, because commands were issued straight down from the top and executed zealously. What are you supposed to take from that, other than just the way the Mass Effect team was very of the orders, we knew what to do and we executed perfectly, and the Dragon Age team was just laid back drunk, so we're just we're just doing stuff, I guess. But no. And you know what else is also an issue with this one as well? And Casey Hudson is the responsible one to make Tali's face a human. Why? Because, he just wanted to do that. The team couldn't really come to a consensus on what Tali's face should look like, and so he just made the executive decision and did it himself. That is the issue with this sort of model of development, because you can basically, when the bad idea manifests itself, you can't push back against it. What a pirate ship can do is hey man, boss man, this is a terrible idea, you shouldn't do this. And that is what makes Dragon Age a lot more of those moments better than Mass Effect in some ways, because it could argue against their development team and actually have changes from there. Those, and again I think I've brought it up before, those giants in Dragon Age Inquisition. That was made by the team in BioWare making that. That kind of decentralized game development is more beneficial because it's more true to what games actually are, which is a collection of people coming together to make a video game. It's not just an auteur experiment. It's not just that. You need the people in those groups participating with each other and communicating with each other instead of just having like one guy saying like, this is my vision, you guys are just extensions of me, just go do it. But yeah, anyways. As the Mass Effect directors took control, they scoffed that the Dragon Age squad had been doing a shoddy job and began excluding their leaders from pivoting meetings. According to people familiar with internal friction, over time the Mass Effect team went to overhaul parts of the game and designed a number of additional scenes, including a rich, emotional finale that players loved. But even changes that appeared to improve the game stoked a simmering rancor inside BioWare, infuriating Dragon Age leaders who had been told that they didn't have the budget for such a big, ambitious swings. This fucking boils my blood, dude. Like, not only did the Mass Effect team be fucking cunts about it, like, oh, Dragon Age, you're really making this garbage. No, Dragon Age asking for the same sort of, hey, can we do some big ambitious stuff, and then EA going like, no way. Mass Effect doing it like, of course, Mass Effect team, you could do whatever you want. Here's all the money you want. It is so infuriating, dude. It is so infuriating, dude. You have no fucking idea. It always seemed that when Mass Effect team made its demands and meetings with EA regarding the resources it needed, it's got its way. Also, forgot to mention this, it also is like, yeah, they just excluded Dragon Age leaders from pivotal meetings. Like, oh yeah, a game that you guys are developing, we're supposed to help you? No, we're doing it now. Get out of here. It's like, and you know what? People have taken the directly wrong approach from this. They're taking the directly wrong approach from this. Because they're like, oh, the Mass Effect team is the good guys in this situation, the Dragon Age team are the bad guys. No, dude, you are morons who are like just looking for a narrative, a very simple, easy narrative because you're babies, you know? It's like, oh yeah, we need the good guy and bad guy. The Mass Effect team is the good guy and the Dragon Age team is the bad guy. No, dude, you're a moron, dude. The issue here fundamentally is that EA has caused this conflict, has caused this lack of resources, because they're the ones who kept saying like, no, we can't give you the Dragon Age team the stuff, and sorry Mass Effect, you can't have that because the Dragon Age team is taking up development, which is inciting conflict. But yeah, whatever, you know, BioWare bad, I guess. Earlier playtesters and Mass Effect leads complained about the game's snarky tone, a style of video game storytelling once ascended and quickly fallen out of fashion. Just say, I don't know why people say like out of fashion. Just say people got bored with it, dude. Don't make it in this like big, huge thing. Part of Goldman's vision for a multiplayer game. So yeah, then they pivoted from that. Oh, here's something I failed to mention here, but Dragon Age multiplayer route limited such choices according to people familiar with the development. BioWare delayed the game's release again, while the team shoehorned in a few major decisions, fuck you, Jason Schreier, such as which two cities to save from the Dragon Age hack, but most of the parameters were already well established, but the designers struggled to pair the new retrofitted choices for players with meaningful choices downstream. Yeah, the reason why we don't have that many choices and consequences in Dragon Age Veilguard isn't because BioWare are bad and they hate life and they hate you and they want to kill you. No, it's because EA again, they literally forced their hand and caused them to like, okay, we need to add choices, but we can't do it because we're so late in development, we don't know when this game is going to release. We think it's going to release literally like so soon this year, next year. We can't really do anything for hold, and we didn't have the time to do it, we weren't given the budget to do it, we weren't given the help to do it. Now we're gonna have to like push these things in. Oh, now you're given more time. You keep it delaying, and you don't know when it's gonna happen. So yeah, it seems like this has been manufactured to cause BioWare to fail, or at least the Dragon Age team, it seems. And additionally, sorry, again, because I think Jason Schreier is weird, shoehorned in. Like, my man, this guy is so weird, dude. He makes these pot shots against the Dragon Age team so frequently. I don't know why, dude. So fucking pathetic. And then at the end of the article, even so, there are many strategic reasons for EA to keep supporting BioWare. Single-player role-playing games are expensive to make, but can lead to huge windfalls and successes. I think this is not understanding EA at all. EA are morons. Do not try to assume EA is smarter than they are, okay? They're people who are just looking for money. They follow where the money is, and where the money is in RPGs. You could say, Baldur's Gate 3 made like 10 million copies sold. No, dude, that's not enough. That's fucking pathetic weak money for EA. EA are discussing in the billions, dude. Jason Schreier even pointed out, depending on timing of its launches, BioWare typically accounts just for 5% of EA's annual bookings. They make 7 billion annually. EA does not care for, oh, that's like 10 million, oh, that can be like 20 million. No, they're asking for more than that, dude. So again, I don't think there's a reason, and obviously, this is where I transitioned here. That said, if they shuttered the doors tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. Curtis adds, who was the TD Crown analyst. It's been over a decade since they produced a hit. So yeah. My blood infinitely boils against EA. EA is terrible and awful, and I hate them so much. And you know what? This changes nothing. Changes literally nothing. This article could come out, a bajillion videos can come out, and the tide of misinformation against BioWare and the hatred of BioWare has just dulled people's critical thinking skills. They will no longer, this will change nothing. Already, people are, and I will look at it now, already people are going through this whole cycle and going sucks for them to be BioWare, but they still made a bad game and are awful and evil and probably shouldn't exist anymore. Yeah, they probably shouldn't exist anymore. Yeah, they shouldn't exist anymore. And that is just so depressing and angering. Genuinely it is. Let's look at this. Corin Bush saved Veilguard from a far worse fate than we owe her apology. That is true, but it feels like you are morons for not realizing this sooner. Jason Schreier didn't say anything new. He didn't. Mark Darrah said all of this and more before his article came out. Yet people are acting like, oh my god, oh my, come on, dudes. How are people's critical thinking skills this down the drain, dude? Couldn't you have simply said, let me look it up. Maybe some developers have talked about this. Oh, Mark Darrah, I guess I should look at this, and then go yes, Mark Darrah has a very, very sensible, and since he was obviously an insider in BioWare, he knows a lot, and he was executive producer, he knows a lot. So therefore, yeah, we know. But no, somehow people needed someone else to tell them that, instead of just using their own brains and curiosity. But nah, no curiosity whatsoever. They're just idiots and morons and fools. And here are some responses from the Dragon Age developers. The worst part is that those issues were called out almost immediately, and choices were also made to push on it. The strategy backed the team into an impossible situation at the start, and it was a miracle we shipped it all. Never mind the shipment at the quality we did, which, amazing, right? Haven't seen the circumstances under which they were trying to create. I mean, I only came in at the end, and it was still holy shit. Yep. Let's take a look at another one. Person without comment, except I refute that we made a bad or compromised game. We made the best version of what we released, warts and all. I'm damn proud of it and the team. We couldn't have made a better Dragon Age, only a different one. Yeah. They did the best they could under the circumstances they have. And you know what? People are going to read that article, or most likely not, because they're illiterate and can't read at all. So they're going to, cultural osmosis from Reddit posts and YouTubers that they watch that say BioWare bad, and go BioWare is still bad. EA is also bad, without coming out with the realization that the Dragon Age team did the best they could with what they were given. And Dragon Age Veilguard, while not a perfect game, it is still a good game. It has a lot of things that makes Dragon Age, and it's good that we got an end to Solis' story. It's good that we got answers to some of the pivotal questions of Dragon Age. But yeah, none of that's going to be taken. It's going to be I sure do hate BioWare. They sure deserved what they got. And here's some what some of the Dragon Age community says about this. Some of them are okay, like this one, yeah, absolutely brutal. Talking about Mike Laidlaw saying yeah, it's live service now. Let's share some whiskey and whatnot. And other ones that are very good, all in all, not surprising but sad to see that the rivalry between the different teams impacted even final stages of Dragon Age franchise. Also, the suspicion that the lighter tone stems from the time Veilguard was supposed to be a games as a service title is finally confirmed. Which, yeah, obviously. Imagine being told as a team that this multiplayer game will pivot to a single player game again, but it needs to reach as wild as possible. All it needs to be finished in a half year. Now it makes more sense to see why things are simplistic exploration puzzles, morely one-dimensional characters, and lack of choices. Also, fuck Matt Goldman. Okay, Deuterino, let's be honest. Matt Goldman probably wasn't at fault here. Okay, Matt Goldman did the best he could in this situation and was like, okay, we're gonna have to make this a lighter tone because, like, you know, that's it. And also, I failed to mention as well, or rather not mention, but just simply say, it's like, oh yeah, they rewrote the game's dialogue to make it sound more serious, right? Which obviously made inconsistent tone, obviously, but like that's what pivoted again. So, yay, we pivoted the game yet again. Oh, fantastic. Ooh, man. I can kind of see that attempt, honestly. You have random bits of darkness like Demeter's Crossing, Wardens, Massacre in the White Side, and Massacrations in Manrathas. And then in like 30 seconds, it's all uncut by companions saying some, fuck off, DanaDuchy, perhaps. like, man, dude. Yeah, I get it. I genuinely think Dragon Age is much more of a, you know, more lighthearted than people give it credit for. Like, literally, dude, like, the entirety of Alice's character is, want to lick a lamp? Have you ever licked a lamppost in winter? Like, it's already existed, man. Now, does that mean it's more in Veilguard? Yeah, sure. That doesn't mean that, like... and this, to me, just feels weird. I don't know, man. It's just... It's filled with so much intentional malice, you know? Like, believe in that, like, oh, yeah, and then it was undercut. Like, they had a fucking choice in it, dude. Like, man, dude. Let's look at this one as well. And the reason I chose this one specifically is because it makes my blood boil the most. Some of the comments in here are pretty fine, which is like this one, like, I'm sorry, but it's generally insane. You need to be like, hey, you guys need to make a simulator again after telling them to switch to a live service multiplayer, and then also giving them the stipulation that no, you cannot start over. You have 1.5 years to use the multiplayer game you've already built as a base, and then thinking, yes, 3 million is a reasonable sales target. Like, yeah, I'm sure BioWare must share some of the blame, which they don't. They share none of the blame. But this is generally disastrous decision making from EA higher ups. Yeah, so some of the comments, reasonable, okay, fine, sane, one might say. But then other ones which are just like, even how the Mass Effect team made the finale of Veilguard, that even people who disliked the game enjoyed a ton. It's kind of surprised me that EA has let BioWare meander with its Mass Effect series when it's clearly their big mass market hit, and a team that seems better pulse on on development and storytelling than the Dragon Age crew, which is so fucking idiotic, dude. Holy shit, it's fucking idiotic. You know, the reason why they didn't do another Mass Effect 4 immediately after Mass Effect 3, because even though EA liked it, was because Casey Hudson went in and said, like, EA, I have a great idea. Anthem. D-pitch Anthem. Yeah, people won't look at that. People won't, like, ask, like, wait, who was the BioWare person who pitched Anthem? They won't ask that. They have no curiosity. They have no desire to learn or to understand why these games are being made, okay? They're just like, yep. BioWare bad. Simple, no thoughts, head empty conclusion, which is just insane to me. Legitimately insane to me that they just go like, yeah, that's why. That's why. And this is, to me, this article changes nothing because the fundamental issue with this entire discourse is that people are not going to be curious about BioWare. They're not going to look at why BioWare ended up the way they did. They're just going to take whatever assumptions and whatever, like, interpretations YouTubers give them and go like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's correct. Yep, I completely agree. And that's it. And it's so sad. It's so sad so many people have such a lack of critical thinking skills that they're not going to willingly, like, look at this. Because if they do, they will have infinite hatred against EA. Because BioWare did nothing wrong. They legitimately didn't. You can say, like, oh, there should be something on. There's one wrong thing, and that is the Mass Effect Andromeda team's leaders. Because they pursued novelty of procedural generation instead of just going, like, handcrafted like Mass Effect 1. Right? That's the only one. Everything else was fucked over by EA. Dragon Age 2 literally exists to plug a hole from SOTOR. You know why EA bought BioWare? For SOTOR. Let me show you. This is Mark Darrah's video on Dragon Age 2, Memories and Lessons, and literally everything he's done. So you should go watch it. It's in the link in the description. And yeah, it's much better, and like actually answers a lot of questions on why these games are the way they are. But you know, knowing the type of people who hate BioWare, they probably are not going to look at it because they're idiots and morons who have no intellectual curiosity of anything.
They bought BioWare and Pandemic together, and at the time, it seemed pretty clear to me that the primary reason that EA wanted BioWare was to get Star Wars The Old Republic. This was at the height of when everyone believed that MMOs were the future, and everyone was looking for something that would be competitive with World of Warcraft. That was going to be a top-tier MMO, and it looked like Star Wars The Old Republic was a good chance for that to happen. SWTOR was supposed to ship in 2009 originally. Shortly after the acquisition, it had moved, and shortly after Dragon Age Origins shipped, Star Wars The Old Republic actually moved again. It was supposed to ship in fiscal 11, which would have been sometime in 2010 or in 2011, the first 3 months of 2011, and it actually shifted again. So EA is kind of ticked off about this. They feel like they've bought this big property and it just keeps sliding into the future over and over again. And they came to BioWare and basically said, you gotta plug this hole. You were gonna ship a game in fiscal 11, so do it. This conversation is happening in late 2009. So Dragon Age Origins has just shipped, done well, and it's December 2009, and BioWare's looking for something to ship.
Yeah. The only reason Dragon Age 2 exists is to plug a hole of some sort. Because EA didn't understand BioWare at all from the very beginning. They wanted BioWare, a single-player studio, to make an MMO. Fantastic. Fire, even. Great. Fuck EA. Holy shit, man. Like, people who are saying like, oh, no, dude, EA's fault. Why does Dragon Age 2 exist? EA. I mean, I like Dragon Age 2, so, I mean, to be fair, right? I mean, like, but the basic point is that that's the reason they exist. And if you look at the rest of this video as well, you also find out the reason that Dragon Age 2 is called Dragon Age 2 and not like Exodus, which Mark Darrah has done here, is because of EA. EA was like, no, we've seen research data, and 2s are great, sequels are great, that's what we need. It needs to be called Dragon Age 2. Instead of just being called Dragon Age Exodus, which is much more accurate to what the game is, and it immediately tells the player that it's not a direct sequel to Origins. Yeah, fantastic. And also you might say like, but BioWare did Frostbite. No, they didn't, you moron. And let me show you.
11. To do that, we needed a new engine. A common question that is asked of me is, was Frostbite the right choice? And it's usually asked with an expectation that my answer is going to be no. It wasn't the right choice. We should have used Unreal. But here's the reality of that kind of question. When you ask that sort of question, you have to really answer it within the context of the reality of the moment. In 2000...
Gamers wanting to answer something in the context of the reality of the moment? Impossible, dude.
2011, Unreal wasn't on the table. It wasn't an available option for an engine for Dragon Age Inquisition to use. The only real choices at that time would have been to continue to use the engine we'd used for Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2, an internal engine that required a lot of updating in order to accommodate larger areas, better level art creation, and better graphical fidelity, or Frostbite. This is a time period where Patrick Soderlund is incredibly powerful within the EA organization. His star is rising rapidly. The choices are keep using the old crotchety thing you have been using, or use Frostbite. And I'll get behind you if you use Frostbite. The reality is given the world that we lived in 2011, Frostbite was the only choice. Additionally, we'd done...
So yeah, EA again. EA gave BioWare an ultimatum saying like, oh, you're not going to use Unreal Engine, you moron. You're going to use Frostbite to make your own engine, you fucking stupid idiot. Anything you can blame BioWare for with Frostbite is not reusing assets. And you know you can blame that? The Mass Effect team. Not the Dragon Age team. The Dragon Age team literally did nothing wrong. It's the Mass Effect team, because for some reason the Anthem and Andromeda team were like, no, we're not going to use anything from Dragon Age because, well, Why would we? They're the Dragon Age team. And what resulted in Mass Effect, Andromeda, and Anthem being very buggy messes. Fire. Fantastic. Instead of just like sucking it up and using what Dragon Age Inquisition developed, they just like, nah, dude, we're gonna do our own thing with less budget, with a less tech budget. So we're gonna have less tools to be able to use Frostbite Engine, a notoriously single-player shooter game, which BioWare doesn't make. Sure, Mass Effect's fine, I guess, but man, they made 3 separate inventory systems. They did that. Why? Because the Anthem and Andromeda team were fucking bricks. Fantastic, and not the developers themselves. The leaders of those teams were bricks. But no, let's for some reason blame EA. Even though this information is now widely available, you can look at all of Mark Darrah's videos on BioWare and go like, yes, this makes a lot more sense. Nah, no way. That's too much information for some gamers who are just not intellectually curious enough about anything, right? And this is what the video is ultimately about. It's ultimately about on how this changes nothing. 5 years into the future, when BioWare is probably like shut down, because EA was like, why do we make single-player games again? And forget the entire reason they bought BioWare was because they wanted to have a diverse portfolio. People are going to be like, yeah, BioWare made some real mistakes. Like, dude, come on, man. Like, man. And I've banted around the theories on why people hate BioWare so much. And I think it's primarily 2 reasons. One, people just hate BioWare because people took inspiration from their games. I made a video called like the cultural impact of Mass Effect, right? In general lines. And it's how Mass Effect impacted gaming. And Mass Effect did impact gaming. It turned a lot of RPGs that were, you know, a lot more choice driven, were a lot more like text driven and all those kind of stuff, and made them more cinematic and had player voice protagonist. People didn't like that, obviously. But instead of doing the accurate thing, which is like blame the people who took inspiration from that, they just blamed BioWare for some reason. For like dumbing down RPGs when they didn't. They just made a different type of RPG, you moron. It's like, oh yes, BioWare dumbed down RPGs. No, they didn't. They made a different RPG, you fucking pillock. No, but you had to listen to the YouTuber you liked who agreed with you instead of like thinking about it for a second. Oh, and that YouTuber you liked as well? No, they also don't really think about it much. They were just like, but I'm not gonna think about it. What does an RPG mean? I don't know. I'm gonna vaguely gesture at an area. Fantastic, dude. Yeah. So, I hope you enjoyed me wretchedly, screechingly talk about why I feel so bad about this, why I hate EA, why I hate gamers, and why this ultimately is not going to change anything. In the future, we're going to be dealing with the same arguments over and over again. BioWare bad because they themselves made the fault. BioWare didn't understand what they were about, even though when they clearly did. That is indicative of the entirety of Mark Darrah's channel. The entirety of like what David Gator says. The entirety of what any of the Dragon Age teams or Mass Effect teams said. No, they're going to go with a very simple, low RQ, no curiosity driven approach and just say, well, the YouTuber told me they don't know, so I agree. So yeah. Thank you, BioWare, for making these games. Would I have wanted Dragon Age Veilguard to be different? Yeah, I would have. I would have liked Dragon Age Veilguard to be a game that had more Dragon Age iconography to it, that had more Dragon Age-ness to it. But you guys couldn't do that because you were fucked over, truly and ultimately. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything because, you know, it happened. You're fired, most likely if you're watching this, and you might be fired in the future if you're watching this. But like, thank you. I recently finished Veilguard again, and oh fuck, man. When they, I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna show it. And this is what I mean.
And we will always be grateful to those whose stories brought us where we are today. and those whose stories will live on with us forever.
Fuck, man. Because I know for a fact that wasn't just meant for the fans. It wasn't just meant for the story. It was also meant for the developers as well. So, you know, thanks. This really did get me last night when I played the game. I genuinely love this series. I love BioWare, and it sucks that we won't get another Dragon Age game for most likely forever, because it genuinely is such an amazing series, and it deserves so much fucking better what EA made it into. So thanks BioWare. Thank you to everyone who helped make this game. You know, thank you.